Hello, welcome. It's Christopher Taylor with Sovereign Harmony here with the December 2025 forecast, the final month of this number 9 numerological year, which has been a year of shedding and endings. Also goes along with the year of the snake, Chinese New Year. So, been a year of endings for sure. And then we have the astrological side of all of that as well, especially with Saturn and Neptune in the final degrees of Pisces, which we'll talk about here. So 2026 is going to be a very different year. And November was an especially difficult month, I think, for a lot of people. We had Mercury retrograde most of that month, very deep in, back into Scorpio and a lot of other stuff going on. So November was a little intense, a little deep. December has a way of sort of lightening things up and getting things moving as we head toward the new year. So this is our quick list of what is happening in December. Not super busy, but we got our full moon, our new moon. We've got the shadow of Mercury ending, Neptune turning direct, just like Saturn just turned direct a couple days ago on the 27th of November, and Mercury turned direct on the 29th of November. So we have that moving as well. And we have Jupiter square Chiron coming back. Okay, that was with us in October for the most part. And that's coming back for one last hoorah here. It'll actually be back in the summer of 2026 when they'll both be in different signs. So right now it's Jupiter in Cancer, squaring Chiron in Aries. When we get to the summer of 2026, we're going to see Jupiter enter Leo and immediately square Chiron at 0 degrees Taurus, which is where it will have just entered at that point. And of course, we have the winter solstice. Can't ignore that. It's going to be part of this, every year. So first, we're going to look at that full moon chart there. So here is the sun in Sagittarius with the moon opposing it at 13 degrees Gemini. Notice the most prominent thing here is the fact that at 13 degrees, it is a direct square to the moon's node. So here's the south node of the moon in Virgo, north node in Pisces. So big decisions. Okay, big decisions are on the horizon here for December. And a big part of those decisions is kind of the energy of this full moon itself, which has a way of being like a rush of air, like a wind, a breeze coming in. Okay, so I said this in my weekly here. If you don't follow my weeklies on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc., and on YouTube, I talked about this before. Think about like having a pile of papers on your desk. A lot of those papers you haven't seen in weeks to months, maybe, that are underneath. A gust of wind comes in, blows up the papers around. It doesn't destroy them, but it does disrupt them. And then we might see some of those papers we hadn't seen in weeks or months, right? And that's kind of what this energy is. We're just coming out of Mercury retrograde, and there's Mercury right there, the ruler of this full moon. It's in Scorpio still, and it will be forming the final water grand trine to Saturn and Jupiter, which it started in late October. So it started with Mercury in late October. Then we had Mars, Sun, and Venus all hit this part of the zodiac in late Scorpio and form that same water grand trine in the last several weeks. Okay, but Mercury, what it started, it will be ending here. And so what we've dug up with Mercury in Scorpio and with this breeze blowing in, okay, think of like, this is being our wash cycle. That grand, water grand trine. It's like a nice flow from one side to the other, uninterrupted. That's this triangle here, okay? But while that's agitating, it's also been very cleansing, okay? Now we have almost like the drying cycle coming in. So we're ready to be hung out to dry. Not so much in a forceful way like an actual mechanical dryer, but more like the old-fashioned hang your clothes on the clothesline kind of drying. So, but that's what's coming in. So there's some clarity. Okay, and that clarity is going to be forcing us to make big decisions that weigh our familiar, which is that South Node in Virgo, with the unknown and what our growth is calling us toward with that North Node in Pisces. Okay, all these personal planets have been making their way from Scorpio to Sagittarius. Remember, Mercury started its retrograde in Sagittarius, it moved back. Then these three personal planets moved through that zone, and now Mercury will move back. And it'll eventually be in Sagittarius. We'll talk about that in a couple of slides. But that is just talking about this idea of diving deep and then seeing, a wider horizon after that deep dive and assessing our beliefs, assessing, what we've discovered about that and how we have been making decisions, for example, that are part of our habits. Are they based on beliefs that are really ours, or are they other people's beliefs? And part of this wind blowing in with this full moon on December 4th is this realization in some cases, it could be very small situations where we just kind of absorbed a belief or an idea about our limitations that we've just carried with us as part of who we are. And this can have a way of disrupting that old belief. And since we've done the deep dive recently, we're ready to say, wow, I can't believe that was holding me back. Something that's small. And so that's part of this healing in that wash cycle, in that water grand trine. So we've come to a place where we can face and heal those little messages, those little beliefs that have held us back, because we're ready to expand into the new beliefs. That's this new entrance into Sagittarius, okay, that we're heading into. Next thing in the docket will be Neptune turning direct, 29 degrees Pisces. It's a final degree, not only of Pisces, but of the zodiac itself. And then Mercury ending its shadow. So again, it started at 6 degrees Sagittarius when it turned retrograde on November 9th. And on the 16th here, it'll be through that shadow. So this is covering the 10th to the 16th there, highlighted Neptune there. Here's Mercury. So Mercury will actually enter Sagittarius a day after Neptune turns direct in Pisces. So that Neptune turns direct on December 10th, then December 11th, Mercury enters Sag, and then on December 16th, it'll reach the point where it started its retrograde. And so now, at that point, all the personal planets have at least entered Sagittarius at that point. In fact, Mars will still be technically in Sagittarius when Mercury enters Sagittarius. So we'll have all the personal planets in Sagittarius ready for what these realizations, what this wind brought in to our awareness with the full moon in Gemini. And so collectively, that could be, people who have clung to certain belief systems suddenly being awakened to the realities of what they've been, committed to, etc. And on a personal level, it can be, again, these little messages in our psyches that go way back to some small incident. Now it's time to actually release that. And because of that release, now we're in a more flowing kind of energy with Mercury direct. We've got Saturn direct. We got Neptune turning direct here. And now all these planets are in the fire sign instead of in the water sign. So everything wants to move forward based on what, that small little thing, that little like piece of thread that was hooked on the furniture, right? And very simple to kind of break free from that. But maybe we didn't realize how easy it was to break free from that, right? Have you ever seen that that meme or photo? It's like an elephant or a horse or something that's tied to a chair, okay? And they don't move because they assume that whatever they're tied to is holding them there. And the reality is that chair is not going to hold you back. And so it's a very similar situation to that. On a collective level, now with Neptune turning direct in Pisces, in the vicinity of Saturn, which again, Saturn's looking to catch up to Neptune, and they're going to meet each other right there at 0 degrees Aries point, start of the zodiac, February 20th, 2026. So that's building. We had the preview of that over the summer when they were within a degree of each other for a good chunk of the summer. And so that will be, setting that foundation now for the next stage of societal evolution. Okay. So I've been calling Saturn the correction of deception. Okay. So think of Neptune since 2011, 2012, when it entered Pisces. This is right when the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act happened in the US, where it became okay for intelligence agencies to use propaganda against US citizens, okay? And that has been used quite well to divide and conquer us on many levels. There's been a lot of deceptive energies about how the media especially has created public perceptions, and especially perceptions of each other. Okay, we have a lot more in common with each other than we do with those at the top. And what is happening here with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in February and 0 degrees Aries is it's going to be like the Berlin Wall. When that came down, it's like a new phase where the filter between the power at the top, and the people at the bottom kind of falls away, just like the Berlin Wall that divided the left and the right fell away in 1989 at the start of the last Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn. Okay, and that's what started globalism. That's what started the collusion between government and corporations at the top, and their media filter that protects them from the people at the bottom. And it's that media filter that has been decaying for a number of years, especially since 2020, and it's going to reach a point of critical mass when they come together. So what's happening here in the next couple of months, as Neptune turns direct here in December, is that there's going to we're going to probably see some desperation moves by those that are in power, that minority of people that are in power, that are actually like, making the, calling the shots and making the rules. And with Saturn right on its heels, it's going to be correcting those deceptions pretty quickly. Okay. So we won't have these long periods of, a certain chunk of the population believing something is true, another portion believing it isn't true because they see through it. Now there's going to be a sense of, all right, this method has always worked. Mainstream media says, oh, this is true, and the truth is going to come out much more rapidly than before. And that's been building for months here, and we've seen that in the last even couple of years. Ever since Saturn entered Pisces in March of 2023, there have been corrections of deception. We've seen plenty of studies come out about certain medical procedures and whatnot that have come since that point, as an example. Okay. And so there are going to be some pushes here in December, January, into early February, perhaps, where there's a sense of trying to fool the public, trying to scheme the public, but Saturn being right on his heels, fixing that and saying, nope, this is the facts. Okay. Because Saturn is all about down to earth facts. Neptune is about the story, the narrative. Okay. And this is about bringing the facts to the narrative. Okay, so watch out for that the next couple of months, especially. Next on the list is going to be the new moon in Sagittarius. Okay, December 19th, just before the winter solstice, and Jupiter and Chiron. I could have probably put these all three in one, but I split it up here so we can look at the new moon first. Okay, so new moon in Sag, there it is right here. Sun, moon, late degree Sag with Venus. Okay, joining the party. And then ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter. That is still in a trine basically to Saturn in Pisces, and will be moving, closer to. It won't reach Neptune until next year, but anyway, still kind of highlighting that. Jupiter's also squaring Chiron in Aries again. We'll see that in the next slide. That is coming back from October. This is growth through vulnerability, and this is that vulnerability we've learned since about 2018. Really getting in touch with old wounds, again, with the idea of holding ourselves back, feeling like we're incapable. And it's this month where it's those messages that may have planted those seeds in our psyches that are just coming up for easy, easy discardment, essentially. And if we only knew we could have just done that all along, we would have, okay? But that is coming up. But looking at this as well, this cluster of the sun, moon, and Venus, that new moon, is squaring Saturn and Neptune up here in late degrees of Pisces, okay? So it's all about this correction of deceptions, this theme that we'll start seeing here in December and January. This new moon is the new set of beliefs. It's, late Sagittarius. We've developed beliefs on what we see with our own eyes, okay? And we're at a point of now setting the foundation for that new set of beliefs that has come out of the birth canal, essentially, of that Mercury retrograde that went back into Scorpio, so we could see, what held us down into the older beliefs, okay? And so what this is going to do on a collective level and on a personal level is make it much more difficult for any deceptions to really get through, because our new foundation is based on a lot of, our own eyes and ears in physical senses telling us what is true, and the data telling us what is true. Okay, high value information telling us what is true. So these attempts at deception with that media filter that protects the people in power, or from the people, that is going to be so much less effective. Okay, and it's this undeniable truth that we have to face. Okay, as we're going through these final endings, okay, of the old message, the old narratives and whatnot, we have to face the undeniable truths and put it back on ourselves. And that's where we start getting back to that Chiron and Aries. It's because this is building us up for this conjunction at 0 degrees Aries, when we've been living in this last 37 years or whatever of Saturn Neptune conjunction in Capricorn, which created that globalism, that created that division between the people in power and the people in the bottom with the media filter. Now that media filter falls away, like the Berlin Wall fell away, and now we're setting up a new way of sovereign authority, of taking responsibility, Saturn, for taking personal responsibility. That's Saturn and Aries, essentially. Okay, so responsibility over ourselves, and then also add Neptune in there. And this is like our souls, or like our complete souls, the whole of who we are. Okay, which is part of like this message that's coming out this month of letting us know like how we've kept ourselves small, because we're a lot larger than that. And the totality of us wants to express itself in this life, and that's Neptune entering Aries. Okay, so we're going to have some pretty strong realizations, again, undeniable truths, and that's going to force us into some big decisions here this month. And it's the more we can trust ourselves into the unknown, the better it will be for us on a soul level as far as what our souls are intending. Okay. And the final thing here, just to kind of finish it up, there's that winter solstice. Okay, that's Sun entering 0 degrees Capricorn, and it's going to have the exact square between Jupiter and Chiron. It's actually going to be with us from December 9th to the 29th. And again, it was with us in October, but we're just finishing up again another rung of that growth through personal vulnerability. And we need that preparation again, because personal responsibility is going to be falling on our shoulders. The ability for those in power to influence our thinking, influence our perception of reality is going to be falling to a close, and it's going to be up to us. It's more about independent media, independent sources, exchanging information, realizing that we have more in common with each other here on the bottom than anyone at the top pretends to represent us. Okay, so it's a profound shift in a paradigm shift that's coming up here in societal evolution. A huge deal in 2026, and it's coming with a 1 year, right? And it's coming with the year of the fire horse. So we have Saturn Neptune conjunct at the 1st degree of the zodiac. It's a fire sign, right? During a fire horse, which is about movement, which is about courage and moving forward, getting things in motion, and that's happening in a 1 year. So it's all about initiation of something brand new, and coming out of something that is all about these endings. So we have just a few weeks left of endings here before we really start shifting in to that new energy. By the time we get to the end of February, we're going to be fully in it in 2026. Okay, but just to reiterate that. So just as a review, we've got that full moon, December 4th. That's that wind sweeping in, helping us realize where we've kept ourselves small, those little messages that have prevented us from being all we are, and releasing those, and finding out things that we forgot were there, that were always a part of us, essentially. Then we got Neptune turning direct December 10th, followed by Mercury entering Sagittarius on the 11th. Okay, so that has us with Neptune and Saturn direct in the late degrees of Pisces. So we are on the grand finale at this point, final closure, essentially. And then Mercury exits the shadow. It's in Sagittarius officially. And then we have our new moon in Sagittarius that squares Saturn-Neptune conjunction. It's that undeniable truth kind of energy. And then we have our winter solstice on the 21st, which is the peak date of this next round of Jupiter square Chiron. It's Jupiter in Cancer squaring Chiron in Aries. That'll be with us for a good chunk of the month. So just as a review, we have big decisions, final closure, and undeniable truths that make it so that we can't really turn back from here. So thanks for joining me. Enjoy the final month of 2025, and join me on the Hill for my weekly updates. I do those here on YouTube, like I said. If you follow on TikTok or on Instagram or Facebook, it's Sovereign Harmony Astrology in all cases. Do it there if you want to. That's fine. And if you want to look at more daily updates, my Facebook page is probably the best page, of Sovereign Harmony Astrology on Facebook. And if you have any questions, let me know. If you want to look at your chart in terms of an outlook for 2026, you can do that as well. Otherwise, I will see you at the end of this year for a yearly update.